Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Deputy Secretary Regas. Thank you for testifying before the committee today. Last Friday, the United States cut more than 1,000 highly specialized diplomatic staff. That action is a gift to our adversaries in China and Russia. China already operates one of the world's largest diplomatic networks with 278 missions rivaling the United States. And you know, these aren't just in countries in the Indo-Pacific and Africa. When we were in France earlier this summer for the Paris Air Show, what we were told is that China had an expanding presence at the air show, more than they had ever seen, and that they had opened 3 new consulates in France and had over 20 Confucius centers. So we should assume that this is happening not just in parts of the world where our allies and partners aren't operating, but it's happening all over. The reductions put America at a disadvantage on everything from negotiating trade deals and securing critical minerals to countering Chinese Communist Party propaganda and protecting U.S. national security. And while we're scaling back and retreating, Beijing is increasing its diplomatic budget this year. And sadly, it's not just China. Russia's drafting plans modeled on the United States Agency for International Development, to expand Moscow's global influence. So with the stakes so high, eliminating key diplomatic bureaus like the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor sends the wrong message to our allies in the global south, in the Indo-Pacific, and on NATO's eastern flank. It undermines long-term trust in the United States as a reliable ally. In fact, we know that China is already saying to many of the countries where we have had programs that they can't trust the United States. We're not a reliable ally. You wrote, or the department wrote, that this restructuring would allow the department to, quote, shape a diplomatic vision that delivers for our nation long into the future. But cutting staff by 15%, slashing the diplomatic budget by more than 80%, undermines that vision, and it could set us back a generation. I support reform and modernization. I think most of the members of this committee do. And if this administration and Secretary Rubio had come to Congress on reform, it would have found a partner. But the department has moved forward despite congressional holds. It's ignored the laws that have been set out by this body. And as a result, the process has been chaotic and haphazard. Let me just give you a few examples which you may or may not have heard about. Those staff people who were supporting Secretary Rubio's trip to Asia were cut while the Secretary was en route home from Malaysia. Foreign Service officers in training for their next mission-critical posts abroad were fired with no warning after we had paid to train them. Civil service employees working on top administration priorities were fired based on old assignments, not based on what they were doing currently. Others received termination notices by mistake. The confusion has left vital positions vacant. We need public affairs officers in Ukraine to combat Russian disinformation. We need political affairs officers in Georgia, where we are seeing month after month of widespread repression. We need consular affairs officers in Colombia to process visas and reduce passports and address the fentanyl traffic that's coming into the United States. We need chemical weapons experts in Syria to prevent terrorists from getting those materials. And yet, these are among the people who were fired on Friday. Earlier this month, I, along with my Democratic colleagues on this committee, introduced the Protecting America's Diplomatic Workforce Act. This is legislation to ensure that before there are large-scale staff terminations, the department justifies them and assesses the impact on national security, because leaving these roles vacant is not streamlining a bloated bureaucracy, as some have claimed. It weakens our alliances, it increases the risk of conflict, it puts Americans in danger. Deputy Secretary Regas, while many of these changes were initiated under DOGE, the responsibility for implementation now rests with you, and this committee expects answers to the questions that we have this morning. Given that these decisions were not based on performance or evaluations or merit, I hope you'll be able to explain how determinations were made about which staff and bureaus to eliminate, and how these efforts make America safer, stronger, and more prosperous, because so far we haven't seen any evidence of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.